And we are live. Of course, it has to do its whole Zoom thing.
It's got a zoom.
It's got a, yeah. It does like this little progress bar, and then it redirects me to YouTube.
Live's not showing up on my screen yet. Shows that our channel's live, but when you go to the channel, it's not there. It will be in a minute, I'm sure.
It will be, yeah. Pop
Let's
out
go back
the
to when you
chat.
said Zoom. I thought you said Zune, and I was like, oh man, talk about failed technology.
Those were the days.
Oh, Zune. Zune. What about Engage? That's the real deal.
Oh man,
Always up for some side talking.
I'm good for that vertical gameplay.
Greg, were you at that press conference at E3? Where they announced the price?
No,
We're not?
I think that
Okay.
was the year that I had left.
Yeah. Okay. That was a great.
Or was
great time.
deported, I guess is another way you could put that.
Thrown out of the country. I think is the.
You'll vote in Trump, but you won't let me
Term.
stay in the country.
Oh no.
Yeah.
That's right. Let's get political, bitches.
Wow. Wow.
And for my first episode,
We'll blame it on you.
no, no.
You should have heard the things he was saying before we started recording.
Oh, I was just reading Phil's notes.
That's
How's that?
bullshit. Phil doesn't make notes.
Yeah.
That would require a level of preparation we haven't seen in 12 years.
Phil only opens the outline like a minute before
Yeah.
we're live.
Phil barely remembers the name of the show.
That's very true. Speaking of, hello and welcome to episode 680 of the Player One podcast for Tuesday, November 19th, 2019. I am your host, Chris Johnston, and with me, as always, from Canada is Mr. Greg Seward.
I am here to celebrate, CJ, with you the end of the NASCAR season.
I didn't
know
even
it's
know
a-
that
there's
was
a big day for you.
happening. Yeah.
You know what? You don't got to front anymore, my friend.
I'm not fronting. I don't care about NASCAR.
I am not fronting. Sounds like the beginning of a rap video in the 90s.
That's right. I'm the Poindexter.
Mm-hmm.
And with us this week is Mr. Luke Lore from the Xbox Expansion Pass podcast. Hey, Luke.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on.
Thanks for joining us.
You look very festive, CJ.
Festive, yes, because of the tree here, the
That
Christmas
his
tree
wife put there.
that my wife put there.
I'm
Yes.
drinking out of a Christmas mug today.
Ooh,
Oh, look at you go.
you know,
right.
Starbucks has their holiday stuff out
Everything
too.
else was filthy.
Pumpkin spice and all that
Yeah, it's
stuff.
that's happening here now too. I find that after Remembrance Day here, which is November 11th, Veterans Day,
Mm-hmm.
that's when the Christmas stuff really kicks into high gear around here.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. So, Luke, you do the Xbox Expansion Pass. You want to tell us a little bit about your show, because you just started this podcast after a long stint as part of the Xbox Drive podcast.
Absolutely. Yeah. A great year on the Xbox Drive. Really enjoyed my time there and kind of branched off. And now I'm doing the Xbox Expansion Pass. It's 7th episode launches tomorrow. And each week it's just a dialogue into the ecosystem of the gaming verse and how it impacts Microsoft. So, you know, as Stadia rolls out, how does that impact xCloud? How does PlayStation 5 news affect the Scarlet rollout? Things like that. And so that's what I try to do each week on
Cool.
XEP.
Cool. And you had a dev interview last week with the Sparklight folks.
Absolutely. Yeah. I had Edward Rowe from Red Blue Games, the developer of Sparklight, on last week. And what a cool game that is, and a fun chat that was.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to be chatting some Xbox on this particular episode of Player One, but I encourage all of our listeners to go check out XEP. We'll put a link to that in the show notes.
Thank you. I love that.
So XO19 happened.
It
I had
did.
no idea.
Greg, did you even watch the Inside Xbox?
No, I didn't see a bit of it. I somehow missed. Man, I am so busy this time. You're like, I just, by the time everything's done, I'm ready to go to bed. Like between swim lessons, hockey lessons, choir performances and practices. My son is in the boys honor choir, and around this time of year is when they perform a lot.
Mhm.
So it's just like Friday nights are the only nights that I actually have nothing to do, and that's only if one of them doesn't have a hockey game. So
what you're saying is on Friday night you
I-
can join Mike and I for some Sea of Thieves, is what
absolutely
I'm
not.
hearing. That's what I'm
And
hearing.
no, I think it was like Friday that I
No.
looked up and I saw, oh yeah, XO19 happened.
Yeah.
But then I've been going like again all weekend between hockey games and choir and everything else. I have not had a chance to sit down and watch anything. But luckily, I hear nothing interesting was announced, so we don't even need.
That's not
about it?
true.
No,
That's not true at all. Well, there were a couple major announcements. We won't go over everything because that would take too long. But there were a couple things I wanted to bring up. First of all, Project xCloud expands. It has expanded now to 50 games in the beta, in the preview program, and they are also getting Electronic Arts titles in there as well.
Yeah, like Madden 20 is there right now. That's a big deal. That's a real big deal.
That is a big deal.
That is a big deal, especially when you consider Stadia launches next week with 12 titles, and you've got Microsoft here sort of swinging with for the fences with 50 titles already.
Yeah, they jumped in with 50 titles and then talked about their region expansions going to Canada, West Europe, Japan, and then India was in there, which is that is a potentially huge market for them. So for them to drop those kind of bombshells and body shots on Stadia as they roll out the service is pretty darn impressive.
And it should be pointed out, as they limp out the service. I mean, like, well, no, seriously. I mean, it doesn't, even without Microsoft doing what they're doing, it doesn't feel like that thing's ready for prime time.
Well, I think it doesn't support enough hardware platforms. I mean, they have Android support, and they're adding Windows 10 support as well. But I kept waiting for like the iOS device announcement that never came this time around. But hopefully, the next time they talk about it, that'll be part of the announcements. But
it's going to be interesting to see, because I think we've talked about that on the show before. But if it doesn't see success fast, I'm curious how long they stick with it.
All right, now, are you talking about xCloud, or are you talking about Stadia?
No.
Yeah,
Stadia.
he's on Stadia.
Yeah.
I think Microsoft has proven, because I remember thinking about this, 20 years ago, because hey, the Xbox turned 20 this week, didn't it?
18.
Remember, was it 18? Sorry. So think about
Yeah.
this 18 years ago when CJ, when you and I were in the press, and CJ just left. But one of the things that was happening then was like Microsoft's coming into the game, but it's like if they were taking on a juggernaut with PlayStation, right, against especially PlayStation 2, because that was everyone already knew in like 1999, everyone already knew that thing was going to take over the world. So there was a lot of chatter about this, and now CJ's back. He might be able to chime in on this, where we would think like, that's okay. If you remember, CJ, where we would think like, well, it's Microsoft, and if the Xbox doesn't take off, are they going to stick around? They don't.
Back in
really
2001, we
need
thought that
video games, right? Yeah, exactly. And but
they've proven that they
were very vocal about the fact that they had like a 10-year plan or something like that, and they stuck with it, because the Xbox, it was successful, but it didn't make a dent in the PlayStation 2.
Yeah,
but they
had
stuck around.
invested in Xbox Live. I think that was kind of
That's
their
really what it was.
technology.
Yes. So asking if Microsoft will stick around, I'd have no worries with them sticking around. They've invested a lot into the Xbox brand. But
I think at this point, Microsoft is too invested in that Xbox brand, and whether or not they would continue xCloud, I think already they have a lot of mind share in terms of a streaming service, and when you have Game Pass added on to that, they're really gaining momentum.
Yeah, I'm more worried about Stadia.
They don't have the sort of install base or user base to match PlayStation yet, but they really do have a lot of momentum going into 2020.
Well, they're working hard to, I think, reach more gamers in more different ways. They've got roughly 50 million Xbox Ones out there, as compared to PlayStation's, 100 million. But xCloud eliminates the need for hardware. And if they are able to roll out well with the Canadian launch, the West European launch, Japanese launch, and the Indian launch, I think they'll do they have the potential to touch far more screens than hardware ever allowed. And with having options if you have 100 million PS4s out there, that means you have how many more DualShock 4s available, and xCloud works with those controllers. That is a huge potential market to bring people in. And so I think regardless of whether or not you have a plastic box in 10 years, you'll have that Xbox Game Studios, that Xbox brand moving through those markets well.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, a year or two into the Xbox One, I think a lot of people were thinking whether Microsoft would even stick with it, right? And then Phil Spencer came out of the woodwork really, and made
Saved
a commitment
it
to gamers.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like the days when Don Matrick was in charge of things. It really turned around. And with everything that they're doing, even at XO19, it's just kind of amassing troops on the border, really just like getting all of the pieces in place, even though Scarlet was not mentioned once during Inside Xbox, or may have been mentioned once or twice, but they didn't announce anything, right? But all of these little things that they're doing for the Xbox platform are really going to shape how that goes down with gamers in 2020.
Well, I think that actually, what happened with the Xbox One in year one is another example of the fact that Microsoft is just so invested in that platform, and I'm not saying, I'm sure that they would have loved for the One to be the platform this generation. Of course they would. They would love to win that, but they've clearly had other plans for a while now.
Yeah. Well, remember when the Xbox One and PS4 were first coming out back in 2013? It seems so long ago now. There was that question of whether consoles were even going to be a thing going forward, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of analysts were banking more on mobile and PC at that time.
Well, that's famously why we saw so many remakes in the first year.
Right.
That's
a lot of predictive news. A lot of predictive news there with it. I mean, you look at the PS4 and the Xbox One launch in, was it 2013? And it was very predictive in the idea that, okay, they've got a camera with in the box with Xbox. Well, now how many streamers are out there? But the messaging was all wrong. PlayStation gave gamers the option. They came out $100 cheaper. Those are huge ways to grab an install base quickly. And then the software is on the way. So as Microsoft has kind of retooled their hardware division and then up their infrastructure with xCloud and the Game Pass subscription services, as they've improved that, you have to imagine that they're willing to negate hardware altogether later on and just allow their services to be their brand and their market strategy in certain places.
That's very true. And during the Inside Xbox presentation, they made a couple of really interesting announcements about Japan specifically. First of all, Square bringing the Final Fantasy series to Game Pass. So basically all the remakes coming to Game Pass in 2020.
I mean, as long as it's Final Fantasy 7 or later.
It's Final Fantasy 7 or later, yes.
Driving me nuts.
And then they're bringing previous Kingdom Hearts games to Xbox. So, of course, the third game came out on Xbox One, but not the previous games. So they are doing that next year.
And Yakuza titles as well. Right?
The Yakuza titles, yes. Yeah. The first three. So Kiwami 2, and 3 coming to Xbox. Yeah.
Those are big deals. That's a real big deal for him to be kind of attempting once again to enter that kind of that Japanese realm is a good thing. You have to imagine Phil Spencer stated he was on a plane multiple times, flying to Japan, kind of building relationships. But those are big gets because previously throughout this generation, those are isolated to Sony's platforms or in some cases to Switch. Now that's not happening. And it offers potential for future and more business deals as new titles come out.
Completely. Yeah. One of the other big announcements at XO19 is Rare's new IP is called Everwild. They showed a cinematic trailer that didn't really show much about what the game is, but it looks beautiful. It looks very much like Breath of the Wild. Very, very
Oh no, Rare's making Nintendo clones again.
Very nature-centric. And the main character had like 2 assistants following her around and helping her up cliffs and such. But it looks really interesting. I have no idea what the gameplay is, but it looks super interesting. And I imagine it's years away at this point.
Yeah.
But I'm very excited about it.
I guess we find out when that comes out, is it that you're a Rare fan or is it that you're a Pirate fan?
Oh, CJ.
I'm a fan of Rare.
Mm-hmm.
I am. I love Viva Pinata. I loved Donkey Kong
You
64.
did love Viva Pinata. Yep.
Banjo Kazooie, Nuts and Bolts, and all that stuff. Yeah, I'm a Rare fan. So, and of course, Sea of Thieves.
Overwild looked beautiful, I thought. I like the color palette. But I have no idea what that game is, and I think that was intentional. Like, I don't think they wanted people to know.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think very similar to when Sea of Thieves debuted, they showed a trailer that basically said nothing about what the game was to get people excited. And it was 3 or 4 years after that point that the game actually released. So I imagine it'll still be the case here. Maybe we'll see like first gameplay or something next year when they're doing Scarlet News. Because I imagine this will come to, this is a Scarlet game primarily, I would imagine.
I would think so. I would imagine so as well.
But then maybe it's just the approach of Microsoft that Xbox is a platform on both PC and on video game hardware and on the cloud. Like, so maybe it is kind of coming to everything depending on what you have access to. But they also announced Obsidian's new project. It's a survival adventure game called Grounded. Mm-hmm. And it looks very Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. The main characters are kids, and you are shrunk down to what the size of an ant or smaller. And you have to sort of build and survive in that sort of backyard world. And it's a multiplayer game as well, so single or multiplayer. Looks interesting.
Interesting is the right word. It was cool to see we were seeing new IP out of Xbox Game Studios that Obsidian, it was probably working on beforehand, and that Everwild's there for Rare. Nice to see that they're making more games beyond what we know, but yep. I don't think anyone saw that one coming.
No.
Like
this is sort of a situation similar to Ninja Theory, where Ninja Theory was just coming off of Hellblade, and people were like, oh, Ninja Theory is making these games with gravitas, and then they show off Bleeding Edge, which is a multiplayer focused action game, and it's like, how do you go from that to this? And then Obsidian is sort of in the same boat there, where they just launched The Outer Worlds, are getting a lot of critical praise for that game, and then here's a backyard survival game that's like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Very different sort of thing from them, but I like it. I'm interested to see.
I like the setting for sure. It's different. Right, not a big fan of survival games, but by the way, just to go back real quick, we said that Stadia's launch is 12 games. They actually just expanded it to 22. Like Jeff Keighley just tweeted it 4 minutes ago.
Really?
Oh wow!
Oh,
so are they good?
Well, I don't remember which one's the original 12. So let me just read them here. So it's
that would be my question as well. Is it
Assassin's Creed Odyssey?
Good? Yeah.
Attack on Titan Final Battle 2, Destiny 2 on Stadia Pro only, apparently. Farming Simulator 2019, Final Fantasy 15, Football Manager 2020, Grid 2019, that's fairly new, Guilt, Just Dance 2020, Kine, Metro Exodus, Mortal Kombat 11, NBA 2K20, Rage 2, Rise of the Tomb Raider, Red Dead Redemption 2, Samurai Showdown on Stadia Pro, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, so that's the last 2 Tomb Raider games, Thumper, Tomb Raider 2013, so the last 3 Tomb Raider games, Trials Rising, and Wolfenstein Youngblood. It's a whole bunch of Tomb Raider.
Nothing great in there.
Well, and you have to wonder,
great games from a year ago.
No system sellers.
No system sellers, and if you can get people to make the switch, you have to imagine that like Red Dead Online or Red Dead Redemption 2's online might make a dent, or Destiny 2 might make a dent because you have the versatility and save states kind of moving. But to get people in, there's nothing there to get people in.
Yeah.
No.
There's nothing there that's special.
Yeah.
Yeah. And well, they have had a couple of AMAs on Reddit where it's kind of come out that a lot of the features of the platform just aren't there on day one, including things like family sharing and achievements.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Anyway, sorry. It just was funny that he tweeted that like literally right after we stopped talking about it. So just want to be up to date.
All right. That was most of the big news anyway out of XO19. There are a lot of little things as well, but those are the major things I wanted to go over. Luke, did you have anything else that sort of stood out to you?
I think in the end, it was nice to see a good inside Xbox that seemed to be well received by gamers, and it was just I think a comfortable and nice way to close out the year of news, where they were able to celebrate Gears and celebrate some of their kind of, Obsidian is a big deal, and move forward, and able to have a conference with a lot of good Game Pass announcements, like 19 day and date games into Game Pass, like ID titles as well as bigger ones. But to celebrate those and not talk about Scarlet, I think is a healthy sign. And Phil Spencer had some good quotes that came out of that. He essentially, in polite, public, relations speak, said, gamers, you don't need to worry about Microsoft's bottom line. You don't need to defend the systems. You should take care of yourself as a gamer, and the onus is on us. Like, it's our job to bring you in. Don't worry about that part. Just play games however you like, and we will try to entice you in. I thought that was a bold statement to make, and a powerful one that sends a confident message going into next gen.
Yep.
Yeah. And also a lot of the announcements that they made at XO19 for even new games, like Grounded is coming out in the spring of 2020. Like, it doesn't seem like they are specifically holding things for Scarlet. That might be because the approach of Xbox seems to be more platform centric rather than tied to hardware this time around, which I think is a really interesting strategy. And we'll see if it works out for them.
Yeah, there's scalability in it. The
Yes.
idea that you have a forward compatibility with your library, it's going to move forward with you, and it can release on Xbox One and play on your Scarlets. You see that with PS4, PS5 as well, but it's essentially PCs now, and they're just making them consumer friendly. So it's smart. They don't need to hold stuff back theoretically.
It's true. Very true. All right, let's get into some other news here. Because we saw a new look at the Sonic the Hedgehog movie.
Yeah,
Greg,
we did.
I assume you saw this.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, what do you think?
I mean, he looks like Sonic the Hedgehog now, so thank God.
I know.
I forget the name of the guy, but apparently they recruited the guy who did the animated intro and ending for Sonic Mania.
Yeah.
Oh, did they really?
To work with the teams. I always, when I talk about this, I always make sure that I'm not saying to fix it, because I mean, he still worked with 3 different teams from all over the place. But apparently, yes, they recruited him to give Sonic a makeover. And I think they were very successful. I think it looks great. For as good as Sonic's ever going to look in a 3D world, in a real world setting. I really feel like this movie now that we know more about sort of the premise of it, that this has a real chance to be this generation's Howard the Duck. But because
Howard the Duck. Come on,
comes from his own fantasy world, and now he's in the real world. And I mean, I think the movie's still going to be terrible, but I'm going to watch it, and at least it doesn't look embarrassing anymore. You know what I mean? Well, less embarrassing anyway.
Yeah, I think with how Sonic previously looked, I was not even interested in seeing the movie.
Yeah, he looked like a nightmare.
A nightmare. But this, I might watch this. Sure, especially if it's
more
on a streaming
approachable.
service.
He looks more
Definitely.
approachable, and it looks like they took some lessons not only from fan feedback but from Detective Pikachu. So theoretically, you like the idea of them receiving feedback and making alterations to please a fan base to a certain extent. It could be a little worrisome in some places, but I would argue that it looks more approachable for fans who are younger and older.
Yeah.
Really all around. It doesn't look like a nightmare, as you said.
And I mean, good on them. I'm curious to see if we hear any stories about any kind of nightmare crunch to make this change. Because I'm sure that the internet will be alight if any of those stories come out, but I don't know that any of that happened.
Right.
But I mean,
it's still coming out on the 14th of February.
Yeah, good on them for listening to the fans and trying to do something about it. Tyson Hess is the name of the artist that I was talking about.
Awesome. Also, we got some news from Jason Schreier that BioWare is planning to completely overhaul Anthem. Despite a lot of sort of rumors and fan talk that the game would be killed off or dead, it sounds like BioWare is hard at work on fixing the game up for Anthem 2.0 or Anthem Next. And I know you're a big fan of Anthem there, Luke.
Oh, don't tell the internet. If you tell the internet you like
What?
something that's not popular, they will.
Don't you know you're not supposed to like Anthem?
Oh, I know. And see, I knew my buddy Babbitt in chat's pointed it out. And I'll tell you the thing with Anthem is that it's a game stuck between worlds. It doesn't quite know what it wants to be.
Like
There's a
Sonic in the
narrative.
new movie.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point. I love the idea that they're going back. I'm glad it's not dead. I loved flying around like I was Iron Man. I like just getting lost and fighting monsters. But there were certainly a ton of endgame issues. And if they are indeed going back to retool things, that I think that bodes well, and it doesn't throw away a lot of people's hard work for years in building something. I think there are hopefully some lessons in using the Frostbite engine, and hopefully, I want them to get rid of Frostbite, if I'm being honest. But nonetheless, I do like to hear that it's not dead and that there's something there for those fans. And I hope they're able to pull a Destiny with Taken King and Destiny 2 and bring more fans in, because it wouldn't be the first time it's happened. No Man's Sky, Destiny 1 and 2. Sea of Thieves, I would argue with its anniversary update, did the same thing. If it's able to exit out and then re-enter that conversation, hey, here's hoping. It's we've seen crazier things and it's been done before.
Yeah, and I think a lot of fans on the internet take some of these games like, oh, it's a bad game. EA should just kill it now, put it out of its misery and get on with whatever. And I think that approach, it may sound just at first blush like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But there are people out there who like Anthem, like Luke. And
Yeah, clearly they've got
I'm telling everybody.
It comes down to it, right? If they've got a big enough crowd that like it, then
right, exactly. If you have a big
That's-
enough crowd that like it, you don't want to kill it off immediately, because then you've pissed off that fan base for when you're going to try to sell them the next thing, right?
That's true. And the interesting thing is that because of these troubles that Anthem has had, this is, I think, pushing BioWare to focus more on Dragon Age 4 and put an emphasis on that, as well as kind of bring back the Mass Effect series itself. So there are potential wins coming out of this decision that are well beyond Anthem. So Anthem's plight might actually be gamers' benefit later on.
Very true. Yeah. All right. Let me bring up the outline here because I clicked off it for some reason. All right. I think we should do what you've been playing now. Greg, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, this will be real simple. I've been really playing with the time I have this week as Luigi's Mansion 3. And man, every new floor in that game, I fall in love with it all over again. I adore that game. It's got so much personality. I don't know how far you are, CJ.
I haven't. I unfortunately, other games have come out that I haven't gone back to Luigi.
You're embarrassing.
Yet. So yeah, sorry.
And I don't know if you're playing it at all, Luke.
Not yet.
No,
it's on my holiday list.
Yeah, highly recommend it. I talked about it last week, where it really rewards you sort of exploring every level, but never to the point that I shouldn't say it's not overwhelming, but it's never too obtuse. The things you have to do aren't like too hidden. To figure them out. But the more I play it, the more I'm really digging the idea of a different theme for every floor, which of course they kind of touched on with the 3DS game where it was the different mansions. But it almost feels like they gave, I don't know how big the team was, but it feels like smaller groups worked on the concepts of each floor, because they're so creative and so different from one another. Like I just did the pirate themed floor recently, which I tweeted some pictures of, and it's like that is basically one or two rooms leading into a big area where there's a pirate ship, and then it's just a big massive boss fight. But then other levels will be like multiple groups of rooms. Like there's one area where you're going through and it's all like magic show themed, where it's just a series of probably a dozen or so rooms that are intertwined, and you have to find your way through them. And then it does some interesting things with rearranging the rooms. But then you get to other levels, like I say, where there's like a big arena for just a massive boss fight, and it all feels like it fits, but it all feels supremely creative at the same time, which I love. And right down to little things like again, this is a later level. I don't want to give it away too much, but I tweeted a picture of this as well, where there was like it's like a, well, first it looks like a disco themed. It's a club. It's the Ghosts Club. And you get in, and like when you're walking down the hallway, it's like you can see the queue with all the advertising for the dance troupe that's in the club. And then like you see the where they take the tickets, and then where they sell the merchandise, and also the coat check and all that. And then you get down and you fight these gigantic ghosts at the beginning, because they're clearly the bouncers. And you can, the whole time you can hear this beat thumping in the background. And then you get to this long stairway, and as you go up, just as you get to the top, you hear a record scratch and everything goes quiet. You're about to open the door. And then you go in, and I showed this picture where you end up in a boss battle where there's a DJ who's clearly the main boss, and there's a dance crew there. So the place lights up. She's playing a record, and it's this group of like, I don't know, a dozen ghosts or something like that in like hoodies, and they're doing a dance routine, which in itself is great. And it's actually a puzzle based boss fight, and that's all I'll really say about that. But the best thing is that while they're dancing, Luigi is dancing at the same time. It's just like a really nice little touch that they didn't need to do, but like, because they're not actively attacking you. You're trying to figure out what you're supposed to do. And I realized I let him stand still for a second, and he's doing like a sort of a stylized version of the Running Man the whole time. And as you walk around the level, he's skipping in that Running Man, and he's snapping his fingers to the beat the whole time. And it's just like the cutest thing in the world. Is like, it makes no sense. He's like totally into it, but he's still trying to figure out what he's supposed to do with these bosses. Anyway,
yeah.
Like,
and then you
like
think
that,
about it, like it probably took a team of multiple people months to do that little thing in that level.
That is so quintessentially Nintendo, to have something as
Yes.
detailed as that could be so small that that many players might miss. But when you catch it, that smile that it brings to your face is just very Nintendo.
And that's exactly it. It's the smile. Like, and I find that with every level, there's some hook that I wasn't expecting, and that I absolutely love. And it just brings a huge smile to my face. And it's so much so that like, there's actually, I did one of the, not the final boss fight, but one of the final, I think it was a final boss, one of the final bosses. Excuse me. The fight was a little too convoluted.
Okay.
To the point that I was getting a little bit frustrated with it. Clearly, it felt like it was balanced for a co-op game. So
and
when
there is co-op in it, right, Greg?
Right, yeah. So, but when you're not playing co-op, you're still playing the exact same game as far as I can tell.
Yep.
But you're swapping control between Luigi and Guigi. And while the fight made sense, the timing to me felt like it was balanced for two people playing the game.
Right.
So it got frustrating, but
like not enough time for you to get Luigi in a certain place and then switch.
I found like I was managing the two of them too much.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But that being said, I only had one extra. I had a golden dog bone, which is basically an extra life where you respawn right where you left off.
Mm-hmm.
And I managed. I still managed to win that boss battle on my first try, but it took 2 full life bars to do it. Basically, like I was down to like 4 hit points at the end. So it was challenging, but it wasn't challenging for the right reason. So the game's not perfect by any means, but those moments like what I was talking about, and like what you said, Luke, where it's like, just these little pieces of polish that they just, you're not expecting, they put a smile on your face, are more than enough for me to look past the very few times that the game has frustrated me. Even people have complained about the aiming and stuff like that in that game too, and I see where they're coming from. Although somebody did mention in our tweets where they found when they played it on the screen using like a pro controller or detaching the Joy-Cons, it felt much more playable. I could totally see that just because of the bigger surface area for the image.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I'm so close to the end of that game now. Now I'm actually in cleanup mode where I'm going back and trying to find all the gems and the booze on each level. But I think other than that, I'm heading into the end game. So, but I love it.
When you finish it, do you expect yourself to be sad that it's over, or will it be the right length for the game?
It's felt just about right. I mean, I've dropped everything else to play this. I don't know what my current playtime is because when I fire it up again, I'll probably be able to see. But I'm guessing it's probably closing in on a dozen hours,
Mhm.
which is to me is a perfect length.
Yeah.
Because more than that, and it feels like something that I just will never overcome because I just don't have the time. So
Right.
yeah. No, I'm as we're heading into our year end and we're going to be doing a year end awards, it's pretty much giving away the game here. But I really, really like this game a lot, and I highly recommend it to everybody. It's just so charming and so much fun.
That's the second charming game that Nintendo's rolled out in as many months, isn't it? I mean, they did Link's Awakening in
Yes.
September, right?
Yeah. It's definitely been a Nintendo fall for me, and I'm not even a Pokemon fan. I can't imagine if I was also a Pokemon fan. I mean, I wouldn't be playing anything else but my Switch at this point.
Mm-hmm.
It's true. Yeah. All right, Luke, what do you got for us?
Oh man, I've been tackling several games, but I think the one I want to talk about first is Worse Than Death, a game.
I've heard of that game.
It showed up on my radar very quickly in a couple different places, and so I checked it out. I rolled through it pretty quickly. I needed help on a few puzzles, but the horror adventure game, I really enjoyed that. It was really cool. It was a horror game in pixel form. It was neat. I liked it. Ben Rivers did a great job on it.
Awesome. Yeah, more people need to try that game.
Yeah,
it's kind of flown under the radar, but it's a great little game.
Yeah, and then I've tackled Jedi Fallen Order, which I think a lot of gamers are diving into and finding that it's not perhaps what they expected it to be. But as a Star Wars fan, I'm appreciative of its quality. It's I think the phrase I used on XCP this week is it is a great game, just shy of amazing. And you can tell in different parts Respawn's an immense talent, but you can also tell they wanted to polish it a bit more in certain spots because they managed to create a great game, and they probably wanted to time it with Mandalorian and Rise of Skywalker, Disney Plus's rollout and such. But it's just a little polish that keeps it from being a perfect 10. But it's a very good game that captures a different way to experience Star Wars because it's using very similar to Dark Souls mechanics, which is not how I want to experience a game.
Yeah,
personally.
Right.
I was going to ask that.
Well, I'll tell you, Greg, and anyone listening, if you are put off by the idea of Dark Souls, as I am still, even some like 5-6 hours in, the difficulty options are very approachable. And so you can just scale it down all the way to story mode, and it's very forgiving on lightsaber combat, and it makes it to where you can just play through this story, which they have crafted quite well. It's well acted, even with the time frame that they're working. You'll run into certain Star Wars characters that make sense. It's not forced cameos, at least not thus far. Okay. It's beautiful. There is an approachability to it that it didn't have before, but I very quickly dropped it down to Jedi Knight, which is their normal mode, and then I'm debating going down to story mode just so I can play. But it's not Force Unleashed. You don't hack and slash. It's all about blocking and timing. It's just a different way to experience it. But I'd be remiss not to mention the Uncharted-esque nature of traversal. You are going.
I've heard that too.
Yeah, you go for long stretches of the game where you are playing almost as a Nathan Drake in the Star Wars world. You don't fight for 5-10 minutes at a time. Sometimes you're just exploring these different planets.
That sounds really inviting. And hearing, I'm glad that you said that, because the thing that's been making me reluctant is the whole comparison to Dark Souls. Dark Souls is a great game, but it's not my game. So,
Same.
Knowing that it's possible to knock down the difficulty, I might have to grab that.
And it does seem like it has things in combat, like the big enemies, when they're about to do an unblockable attack, they turn red. Right. So it's not like Dark Souls where you have to know the tell of exactly that enemy. Like they have a little bit bigger tell.
Correct. Okay. If there are fans listening that are fans of Dark Souls, you bump it up to Jedi Master or whatever the ridiculous name they have for the next one is, and you'll feel right at home. But for someone like me who just wants to swing the lightsaber and go around, I've had to retool my brain a bit. But it is a nice feeling to be back in a Star Wars world in a video game, and it be treated well and with respect. So that is a nice aspect to it. That was what inclined me to support it blindly, even though I'm not a Dark Souls person. And I'm finding that there's something there for gamers that aren't Dark Souls fans.
So what do you feel are the bits of polish that are missing? Like I've heard that from a few people, like it's just missing polish. Like what what would you have expected them to do, or what are you hoping that they address via patch?
Well, I have to be careful with the wording here because I don't want to accidentally spin a narrative that it's somehow not good, right? It's very, very good. It's great even, but there are moments where textures will pop in unnaturally, and we're not talking about the zoom in 400% like in Pokemon Sword and Shield kind of thing. Nothing ridiculous of that nature, but there will be pop in. There will be some strange and odd hair physics where Cal's hair will be waving in the wind, and it's just uncomfortable to look at, or certain faces will. It almost reminds me of, if you remember when 3D technology was kind of coming in and facial rendering was a thing in the early part of this generation and the latter part of the last one, there was an uncanny valley, but also the kind of a dead eye look.
Yep.
Moments where that unsettling feeling can make its way back in. So I think that's what I'm talking about. I've also noticed that by nature of the gameplay style, it makes more sense to drop it into or change it to performance mode, where you are playing in 60 frames, 1080p versus 4K, better visuals, because it wants you to play with a perfect frame rate for timing purposes. And it's surprising to see that to make that jump in between, but the option is nice to have to flip back and forth. But yeah, texture pop in, hair physics, just uncanny, strange
little things.
Exactly.
Like that. Okay.
Little things. And the truth is, unless I pointed it out, I doubt many people would notice it. It's just a critical eye when you look at it.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm gonna have to play it.
Yeah, if you're a Star Wars fan, I would imagine you'll find something in there for you.
Have you watched any of The Mandalorian, by the way?
Absolutely. And it is amazing. And I don't want to spoil anything for anyone, but I will tell you that it justified my time spent in Disney Plus, and it's nice to see yet again another high quality Star Wars production. That's cool.
Yeah, and for someone like me, where the last Star Wars thing I saw in the theater was Rogue One, like I haven't seen The Last Jedi or Solo. And I kind of just
what are you doing?
Dropped out of Star Wars, I guess. But
no one.
They made that easy to do.
And here's the thing, though. I saw the trailer for The Mandalorian. I'm like, oh yeah, like bounty hunter, Boba Fett thing, whatever. The fact that it was a launch title for Disney Plus made it easy to just take a look at it. And the first episode's only 40 minutes long. Okay, I can do that. Like I can dedicate 40 minutes to this thing. And by the end of that first 40 minutes, especially the end of the first 40 minutes, I was very interested to see where else it went.
Yeah.
It's directed by Jon Favreau, which is...
Yes.
I did not know that until the closing credits of the first episode. And that was I saw that, I was like, oh, wow. Jon Favreau. Cool.
That's right. That's right. He put Iron Man on the map, and that was
he
not
did
an
kick
easy
off
fix.
the MCU.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
That's right.
If you remember what a dweebus Iron Man was before the MCU, it was Jon Favreau's directing an idea that put it into mainstay frame, and so his talent shines through many of his projects.
It's true.
Yeah. No, I think I agree with you too, CJ, because I haven't seen Solo. I've seen some of Solo, and they made it easy to drop out of the Star Wars universe because
they really did.
There's just been so much of it in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe longer. I don't really know what the time frame is, but yeah, like it's like, hey, Disney Plus, I've got my free account for like the month or whatever, a free trial. And I'm sifting through it. And it's like, I love everything I'm seeing about it. I love all the classic stuff on there, but Mandalorian's new. I'm going to check this out. And the same way, I was like 10 minutes into the episode, I was like, well, I got to see where this goes.
Yeah.
And really dug it.
The awesome thing is the trailer for The Mandalorian really does not tell you much. I mean, it shows you a lot of action set pieces and stuff, so that if you're a Star Wars fan, you get that sort of visceral, like, oh, I got to see this thing. But it doesn't give away what the story's about, which I thought was great. It doesn't give away anything. So you come into it and it was easy to be surprised by where it's going. So
I think one of the nice things about a show like Mandalorian in a service like Disney Plus is its consumability, because as you mentioned, that 40-minute time mark is just enough to get past kind of your sitcom level, like short bursts. but
Yeah.
it's not overwhelming. It's
Not
perfectly
feature
timed
length.
for right, exactly.
Yep.
And in that story, there was plenty for diehard Star Wars fans. I know my
Sure.
Nerdverse and I, we were sending back and forth messages about Easter eggs we saw, but there's a good story being told outside of all that, which is nice. And within Disney Plus as a service, to talk about that for a moment,
Mhm.
I think it's appropriately priced. There is a lot of content for multiple types of fans. There's a ton of Disney stuff. My wife is watching Fox and the Hound downstairs right now. And earlier today, I was watching, Marvel cartoons and Star Wars Rebels, and there's so much there. And then National Geographic's actually good and cool, which is neat. It's nice to see kids getting in on that. I'm a teacher by day, so it's nice to see kids getting into it. And it's a good service. I'm liking that it's priced where it is so it can push Netflix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. I'm
Get it
happy
together.
with the UI and user experience of the app as well. Like, because I think there are so many ways that can go wrong. And while they still have a ways to go, I think they disabled the sort of continue watching functionality.
That
did.
is my only complaint.
Well, it was there, and then they had to remove it because the service was being hit so hard.
Also read
yeah.
today that apparently a fair amount of the accounts have been hacked.
I saw that too.
Yeah, they need two-step.
Well, on launch
verification.
day, I got emails in the middle of the night that my account had been changed in some way, and I have no idea what that was about. I guess a lot of people got those emails too, but yeah, good for a start. And competition in the streaming realm is only good for everybody.
Yep, fully agree.
Was that all that you played, Luke, or do you want to talk about anything more?
Sparklight. Yes, I'm so sorry. Sparklight.
Yes.
I have been playing Sparklight after having the developers on XEP last week. I got to dive in and play the game, and the game is fantastic. I think fans of, their marketing pitch is it's very much a Link to the Past mixed with Rogue Legacy, and then Cliff Bleszinski of many different franchises talked about it being a Zelda, a Spark. What was it? Steampunk Zelda with guns and gadgets was, I think, his quote.
That sounds pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. I'm playing through it right now. You essentially, the premise is you're going down onto this world and you're farming Sparklight, and you get different upgrades to your character, and you're moving about a procedurally generated 16-bit esque world, but you move and traverse in very similar to A Link to the Past. And as you get Sparklight and collect gems and battle enemies and defeat bosses, they have these Titan bosses that really feel epic. And in the beautiful, beautiful artwork, you come back and you gain stronger abilities, make yourself and improve your character, and you go back down and you do it more. And there's a fun gameplay loop there that is challenging. Because I shy away from roguelikes typically. It's not really my jam, but Dead Cells taught me that I could have a lot of fun with it. And I'm finding that with Sparklight, there is plenty to enjoy there. And it really does do something new while honoring its nostalgic roots. And there's a fun little message in the story there. And there's little in jokes throughout the game. I thought Red Blue Games has done a good job crafting this world. And it's a game that, I did get a review code for, by way of the interview and just covering the game. This is a game I would buy, in a heartbeat if I saw it. It's just beautiful work.
Cool. Yeah, the pixel art on it looks great. I'm kind of right there with you with the roguelite and roguelike gameplay. Like, it either really hits with me or it doesn't at all. I'm somewhere in the middle there. Like, Rogue Legacy was one of my favorite games, a really, really good game. Whereas Dead Cells, I kind of bounced off it early on. I mean, I liked what I played, but it seemed like the zones in that were just a little too similar. It felt like I was fighting the same enemies over and over again. How does Sparklight compare with something like that?
Hard to say, because they are, Dead Cells is a 2D platformer, and Rogue Legacy. I think there is definitely a difficulty here. The procedural generation will throw you off at first if you're expecting a map in the same way as Link to the Past, but you get something called patches in the game, and patches are just essentially upgrades to your character, and they can give you things like, more hearts, better health, stronger weapons, or you can get like a map, and that'll show you where Titans are on the map, and those are your big boss battles. And I would encourage anybody, go check out the launch trailer for Sparklight, because you will see very quickly if the art style is inviting for you. And the boss battles are epic and really, really cool. It reminded me of, or at least one or two of them, they looked like if you had taken some of the Breath of the Wild bosses and turned them into pixel art. That was the vibe I got from it. I don't know if that was their intention or their inspiration, but there was a compelling sense of nostalgic but new vibe to it. I was a fan of it.
Cool.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed the interview with them. Good guys, and they're North Carolina based, so I was a little biased there. That was fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, I've been playing Pokemon Shield. That came out on Friday.
How are you liking it?
And you may have heard the internet talking about it a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I've been playing Pokemon games since the very first ones on Game Boy, and I'm a fan of the series, but I'm not not a hardcore fan. I'm not going to worry about how many of the 900 Pokemon that have been around are in this game.
I was going to say, it's not the big controversy.
That's the big controversy. Yeah. But for me, it's like, I don't even really care about seeing the Pokemon that I know. I want to see the new ones.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a problem for me that I'm seeing all new Pokemon designs, and I don't even remember what my teams were in previous games. So I'm fine with basically wiping the slate clean and starting a new Pokemon adventure with a new character. And this is a really, really fun Pokemon game, in part because they've streamlined a lot of the user experience. And they started doing that with Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee. And it's things like when fighting a wild Pokemon, in the old games, you'd have to go to your bag, and then you'd have to select the Pokeball pocket, and then you'd have to select to throw the Pokeball at the monster or whatever. I'm describing Pokemon's gameplay is a little weird, but in this one, when you're fighting a wild Pokemon, you can just hit the X button, which is in the corner of the screen, has a little Pokeball icon next to it, and you quick select your Pokeballs out of that, and you skip 3 or 4 steps, which is awesome.
It's got to be tough to create a game that invites new fans in. I mean, it's the Star Wars problem. It's a lot of long running franchises honors what older fans and will find nostalgic and fun and worthwhile, but create something more inviting. I think that's why they created Let's Go, and they certainly took lessons from Let's Go into Sword and Shield. But what a conundrum to have. Did you find the game to be a more approachable for a new player?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, they've done things over the years to simplify the gameplay, such as if you have fought a Pokemon before and used certain attacks against it, it will then tell you when you fight them again which moves are effective against that Pokemon.
Yeah, that would be nice.
So you don't even have to, there's no guesswork there. The first time you battle them, you have to trial and error. But the second time, or once, at least once you've added them to your Pokedex, you don't have to guess which moves are effective, which is fantastic. But yeah, my daughter is playing it alongside me, and actually, when we started playing the game on Friday, I watched her play, and she had a lot of fun, customizing her character and picking her Pokemon. It was quite a deliberation there on which one she should pick, and I think
What'd she pick?
She picked Grookey, which I also picked. Grookey. When they announced the starters, I already knew that I was going to be a Grookey fan, but and that's the grass type monkey sort of character. But yeah, they have made it very approachable. She only stumbled over a couple of words, and she just turned 8, so she's reading the game herself, and everything is really well organized. The text is nice and big on the screen, and I mean, yeah, every Pokemon game has the same exact plot, where you start with a brand new character and you try to be the very best, right? And how many
one ever was?
How many Pokemon games have there been with that exact same plot? But it feels fresh because new players come in, and that's part of the appeal. It's easy to pick up. and there are hardcore fans that sort of dig into it and care about getting the shiny version with the good temperament. And I don't have to care about that to enjoy the game as I feel it should be enjoyed. So
does it
and they
feel
have
like a good console Pokemon game? Like, if you pick it up with pro controller and sit in front of your TV versus like mobile or handheld?
I mean, here's the thing. I think Pokemon has always at its heart been a handheld game. And it's the meaning of the game is to battle with friends and play it with people outside of the house. And I think it makes it a little easier for the Switch because you can, hook it up to a TV and whatnot for it to feel like a console game. And it does feel like a console game, but it still feels like quintessential Pokemon, right? Still that same sort of experience. But I'm really having a lot of fun with it. And they've tweaked a lot of the onboarding too, like the tutorial information. The game will ask you questions like if you already know about certain things, and depending on your answer, it'll like give you more tutorial or less tutorial for that thing. So that's nice. Little UX enhancements there. Very nice. I've also been playing the Stretchers. This is
that right.
Paramedics game. Yes. Pair of medics. I think Phil made that joke last week.
Yeah, I remember that from last week when he said
that sounds like a Phil joke.
But I finally got a chance to play it this week, and I played in co-op with my daughter. And it's one of those games very much like Snipper Clips where you have to detach the Joy-Cons and play them sideways. You can't play with two Pro controllers or any other mode. So you have to play with the sideways Joy-Cons, which it works fine. And it was such a good time. It's very much kind of like Overcooked in the way that you have to synchronize your actions. The stretcher characters, you'll have to like dip the stretcher down and sort of hover over the dizzies, the different like sick people that you're supposed to pick up. And for a while there, my daughter was pressing the button to let go of the stretcher instead of like lower it. And there's a timer going off at the top of the screen. Like you'll get a bonus if you get back to the hospital in such and such amount of time. So, and some of the puzzles get a little bit more difficult where you'll have to like manipulate parts of the background and make jumps to get to the hospitalized or the sick people, injured people that you're supposed to be collecting. But it's really a unique title and pretty fun as well. And you get to pick which player drives the ambulance.
Who drives the ambulance usually?
Me. I drove the ambulance. Charlotte got in the driver's seat once and tried to drive, and then she got out and had me
tired of you yelling at her. And
I was not yelling at her.
Drive.
I was not doing that. No, but it's a fun game with a little bit of a Crazy Taxi bent to it. If you like the type of co-op games like Overcooked or like Snipper Clips, where you can have that sort of couch co-op experience, I think you'll really like the Stretchers.
How much was it, CJ? Like, is it a good holiday gift kind of thing?
Yeah, it's a $20 game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think would be a great gift for, kids and families who like to play together.
Mm-hmm.
So I probably could convince my wife to play this game too, but she'd either be yelling at me or I'd be yelling at her, and maybe that wouldn't be such a great idea. But yeah, it's fun stuff. So I guess that means it's time for, let me get the soundboard ready. Tweets.
Tweet. Shiver right down my spine.
Can I tell you that I was emotionally prepared for you to say, "All right, Luke, since you're filling in." You
were ready to sing it.
I was ready.
All right.
Listen, every week I was ready to do it.
Got moxie, kid.
No. That's right. All right, let's start off with this one from Hacker Alias, the Defective Ram, who says, "What was the first thing you guys watched on Disney Plus? Mine was The Mandalorian."
Hercules.
The
because
movie or
I
the
love that
TV?
movie.
The
Love
movie.
the
Okay.
movie. I love that movie. Hadn't seen it in a long time.
Mine was The Mandalorian as well, and then Star Wars Rebels followed that, and then just because you asked for all three, I'm sure I started watching some old Spider-Man cartoons. It was good. Disney Plus is for me.
Very nice. Mine was Gummy Bears. The
Nice.
old 1980s Gummy Bears.
I definitely
series.
took in some Darkwing Duck too.
Oh,
Just
That's-
to hear the theme song, but that show was great.
Darkwing Duck is on there. I
Yes.
missed that. Oh,
Yep.
that needs to be in my recommended section. I need to check that out.
Yeah, like all of those great late 80s and 90s Disney shows are on there. It's fantastic.
Excellent.
They even have Spider-Man and his amazing friends from
I
back in
know.
the early 80s.
Right?
great.
I couldn't believe it when I saw that list there. Like, oh my god, I'm having so many flashbacks.
Yeah, it really
Spider-Man and his amazing friends.
is. It's great to have a service where it's almost all back catalog, and
Yeah.
it's back catalog that you're familiar with.
I mean, one of the other things I watched was what were they called? What was it? It's basically when Mickey, Donald, and Goofy are the Ghostbusters, well before the Ghostbusters were a thing. Something Ghosts. Anyway, it's an old short from like I don't know how long ago. Where they're in a haunted mansion and they basically have a ghost busting service. They're ghost hunters for hire, and the ghosts in the haunted house hire them just so they can mess with them. It's a pretty famous short. Anyway, I was really happy to see that in general, that there's a bunch of old animated shorts on there. Although I really desperately hope that at some point they add the Goofy sports shorts, because they were some of my favorites as a kid.
Oh yeah.
Remember like when he learns to ski and play hockey. The hockey one kills me every time in the baseball one. Anyway, really happy to see that they're actually digging into that vault as well, along with their old movies.
I was thinking the same thing, Greg, because like how many of those shorts have just been lost to time because they're extras or they're small and they just don't make reappearances on Blu-rays and whatnot.
Right. Well, I remember too, like when up here, it was called the Family Channel, which I think still exists as the Family Channel. I think actually the Family Channel was in the US as well. Here it was definitely a Disney thing.
Right. We had the Disney Channel, you had the Family Channel, but it was mostly Disney stuff.
Right. And now I think the Family Channel still exists here, and it's got a partnership with Disney. It's the one that plays all the Disney shows. I think that's how it works. I don't remember now because my kids don't really watch it as much anymore. But back then, you used to see them all the time as bumpers on that channel. But you know, like there was the things like around Halloween when they would have like, you know, back when we still had appointment television, and you know they'd run like the Disney Halloween special, and they'd have clips from all these. Like there's that famous one too where there's the gorilla that gets loose in Donald's house, escapes from the zoo, and it gets loose in his house. And there's like, as you watch these, you see famous scenes that you know you've seen in clips and montages throughout the decades of Disney animation. But it's so great to have them there. I love that they have included some of those classic shorts, and I really hope they continue to add to that list, because it was a nice surprise. You know, expected all the Marvel movies, all the Star Wars movies, all the sort of animation Renaissance films and the Pixar stuff, but to see those there too was really exciting.
You know what I'm politically interested in this is there are certain shorts in Disney's history or certain things that may not age well. I'm curious to see how they approach that.
Well, you've heard that they I think Dumbo was one of the movies.
Yeah, I think they do have a message on before the movie plays.
They basically said that, you know, we know that, I forget what the wording is. We know that it's not appropriate now or hasn't aged well or blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But this is what this was released as, and they released it. The full version, which I think is fantastic. That's exactly how it should be. Warner Brothers did that years ago with the Looney Tunes Golden Collection, where they actually had, I think it was Whoopi Goldberg who had a little like intro just saying like, we know that this stuff is not appropriate anymore. But it exists, and this is part of what built this brand, and here it is in its full glory. You know, yes, it will be offensive, but I think that's exactly the way to handle that, and bravo to them for doing so.
Yeah,
hope they continue to do that.
Yeah, I watched episode 1 of the Imagineering series they have going on. That it's like the making of Disneyland, and that was some fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
And I watched the Jeff Goldblum world according to Jeff Goldblum.
I love that when you see the banner for Disney Plus, it's like here's Ariel and here's like Woody from Toy Story and here's Luke Skywalker, and like there's all these iconic images, and at the very end is Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah.
Well, there it is.
That's right. Yes. Insert Phil impression as well. Yeah. Let's do this one from hacker alias Agent Ching, who says, I picked up Pokemon and am enjoying it. I don't understand all the criticism of Game Freak and their decision to leave old Pokemon / other things out of the game. I'd never caught them all anyways. So what other games had tons of backlash that you couldn't care less about?
All of them.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times just in the echo chamber of Twitter, we think that things are getting huge backlash when in reality maybe it's not. Maybe it's a couple of forum posts, and the majority of gamers or players or purchasers, consumers, customers of that don't even know or care about said issue. But the majority of Twitter users or Twitter users that have interest in that, they're the ones that are riling up a conversation. And so we all like things that get a backlash. I was put on blast earlier for liking Anthem, but it happens. But I think the goal is to enjoy what you want to enjoy, regardless of what people say or think, or if others have moved on to other things. And that's the whole point of like what Generation 16, Greg, is to celebrate and enjoy what you like and what you enjoy covering. And then there are people there for you. There are audiences there for that. And when you're able to find and collect people together for it, just enjoy it, regardless of backlash.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, I can't think of any major game. I'm sure there have been games that were released in series that I love that I've been irritated at for various omissions or changes. But at the end of the day, it's a good game. It's a good game. If I like it, I like it. And the Pokemon thing, I don't know. What did you say earlier? We're at like 900 Pokemon now.
Yeah, like when you total up all of the different monsters that have been across all the games, something like 900.
There weren't going to be. They weren't put all those in the game. Come on.
Well, the ask of having developers create systems to operate and work around 900 unique characters is huge and monumental.
Yeah.
And there's something okay with scaling back. When Disney took Star Wars, much to my pain and chagrin, they wiped out a number of extended universe things so they could have area and space to work in. I think that's a healthy and okay thing, because if you're constrained and your content Bible rules is so big, it removes your own creativity abilities.
The other thing too that I have to say, and I feel like since Phil's not here this week, we can talk about this, is that if you were on the playground playing Pokemon back in, when did it come out? 98?
I think earlier than that. I think 97.
97?
Yeah.
You ain't who they're selling to anymore.
Well,
you're not. Sorry.
You are, but I don't think you're the main.
You're not who they're going to be selling to for the next 20 years.
Yeah, you're a sliver of their
That's
demographic.
Yeah,
overall.
you are a tiny piece of their demographic now, or the demographic they're aiming for. Like, because I mean, there's no that. Amazingly, that franchise shows no chance of slowing down in any major way. And I don't mean that to say that it's not a good franchise. I mean, that's amazing that it's been so huge for so long. But they're not going to keep it healthy by placating 40-year-old gamers.
That's
sorry,
true.
They're not. Like they need kids. They need young people. So I mean, that's who those games are. I'm not saying that they don't want you to enjoy them too, but you are not the most important people. It's the teens and the early 20-somethings that are the most important people to that franchise.
Yeah, I think so too. And I really tried to not pay attention to the backlash just because it's aspects of the game that I don't really have a strong opinion about. Like I like being surprised by seeing new Pokemon that I've never seen before in each new game. I don't need to see the ones that I was playing with in 97 necessarily, except for Pikachu. They got rid of Pikachu, then maybe we'd have words.
See, but that would never happen.
That would never happen, exactly. All right, let's do this one from Hacker alias Daniel Nolan 3, who says, "Why do the special edition PS4 consoles come with a physical copy of the game? I see no business reason for this decision. For much cheaper, they could just include a code, which is what Microsoft does, and I don't see how anyone could complain."
You don't see how anyone could complain?
There are, for at least half the market still loves physical copies of games. Like, we have not yet made it to the stage where everybody's okay with just a code.
Yeah. There's no right
I think
or wrong
we're
way to
getting there. We are getting there. But there are people who are happy when they find out that such and such pack-in is a physical copy and not a code.
I mean, hey, if you don't like the pack-in, you can sell it. It's not going to be worth anything, but you can still sell it.
You could do the same with the code.
That's true, I suppose. Yep.
As long as you obviously haven't used it yet.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. I think there's no right answer for it. Yeah, it would definitely be cheaper for Sony to not include a physical copy. That's where we're going eventually. It is interesting that Sony's held out, but yeah.
True. Hey, Luke, are you still a physical game buyer, or are you digital? Where do you stand on this?
I'm all digital now. In fact, I often with my friends joke around while I wait for sales of digital things when you could go and use like the Best Buy discounts and this, that, or the other for physical copies. But yeah, I'm very digital. I find the convenience far outweighs anything else for me. And part of what did that was the initiatives by Microsoft to say that they are forward compatible.
Yeah.
Because I have a PS4 and a Switch. I main on my Xbox just by way of the coverage I try to provide on the podcast. But the idea that my library travels forward incentivizes me to go digital and to stay digital, as does their subscription service. So buying a game physical, I would have to keep and move that physical game around with me wherever I go. So it doesn't make sense for a console, but for Switch, I'm more understand with a Switch because that's, it's a bit more mobile.
Yeah. All right, let's do this one from Hacker alias Earthbound G-Man, who says, "Video game death row. You get to choose one game to play. When upon completing, you have to swear off gaming forever. Which game do you choose?"
Well, that's awful.
What game is going to be your last game ever?
In a theoretical world, or is it one that already exists?
You can take it either way, really. I mean, I know my answer is going to be Sea of Thieves, right? I mean, come on.
Yeah, but you never finished that.
Dude, you never finish it. You get an easy out there.
Exactly.
That's cheating.
I don't see it that way.
Any games or franchises you
I remember it differently.
Video game death row. I would want to play whatever the next Batman game is, Rocksteady Arkham, whether it's WB Montreal or Rocksteady. I want to know what that is. I've got a lot of eyes on that. I really enjoy the Arkham series, and I want to see what's next for that character. I really enjoy Batman in general, so I want to know what's next.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we're saying like coming attractions here, I'd say the next Streets of Rage.
4 or after 4?
4.
Okay.
Just because, for the same reason you just said, Luke, because the first game that leapt to mind when the question was read was Streets of Rage 2. So, but if we're talking something coming up, I would like to experience that.
Yeah.
But then I just find ways to play video games anyway.
If we're talking about games that are coming up, I want to see Breath of the Wild 2. See what that is. Because we know it's in development. Do we want to see what form that takes? Or what are they going to change / fix about that? Are you going to have your durable weapons still in there? Or are you going to have the dungeons? Or is it going to be shrines like last time? Like what form that takes, I'm very curious about.
I want to know if any of my accomplishments from Breath of the Wild could or would make an appearance or have an impact on Breath of the Wild 2, like the house that I built in Breath of the Wild and would so meticulously put certain weapons on the wall. Could that be in Breath of the Wild 2? Because I think it started as DLC, or at least it looks like it did. will that make it a change and an impact? I'm curious to see what that does and when they launch it, because they've got to contend for mindshare around PS5 Scarlet next year, if that's when they're planning to release.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be it'll be really interesting to see how Nintendo and the Switch deal with new hardware platforms from two really good competitors.
And
Yeah.
do they bring in xCloud or streaming technology the way they did in Japan with, I think, Resident Evil 7 and a few others? Do they make
there have
themselves
been a few
available?
games. I think Assassin's Creed Odyssey
Right.
is in there as well as something that's streamed to the Switch in Japan. Do you think Breath of the Wild 2 will be their wild card for 2020, or will it be something else?
With Nintendo, you never know. Greg,
You never know.
It's always a crapshoot.
That's right. I mean, it probably won't be Metroid Prime 4, right? I mean, I figure
Ah,
we're probably a few years away from
I
that.
forgot about Metroid Prime
That hurts
4.
every time you bring that up.
I know. I want that game so badly. Corruption was one of my favorites. I loved Metroid Prime proper. I love Metroid 2D. Oh man, I've almost bought a 3DS on multiple occasions just to play Samus Returns.
Oh, and that's a great game too.
I just want that Switch port.
Yeah, surprising they haven't done that.
Yeah, right?
Very
Right?
surprising. Maybe next year, though. Who knows?
Never know. You never know.
Yeah. All right. Is that a show? I think that's a show. I think we're good.
Yeah.
Sounds
Hey,
good.
That's a show.
Okay. All righty, and that is our show for this week. Thank you very much for listening. If you have a question for us or would like to comment on something you've heard, you can direct that to @P1Podcast on the Twitters, or you can go to our internet website at player1podcast.com. There you'll find our contact information. You will find blog entries about Sega CD stuff from Mr. Greg Seward.
I will be working on the next one once I finish Luigi's Mansion 3.
Nice.
So that should be soon.
Should be very soon, yes. You'll find Generation 16 episodes as they happen.
The rough cut of the next episode is very close to completion. I just need to do a couple VO re-records. And then I'm going to be moving on to a bit of a different subject. We're going to actually put 1990, which is where we're at right now in the series, on hold to cover something else. So I'm excited for people to find out what that's going to be.
Very cool. You will also find show notes and links to everything that we talked about during this episode. And you will find a link to our Discord server where you can discuss this episode with us and our other listeners.
Here's where I mangle what Phil usually says. If you'd like to subscribe to the Player One Podcast, you can do so by going to player1podcast.com or the Apple iTunes app.
Apple Podcasts.
Apple Podcast app. See, I knew I'd screw it up.
One. Yeah.
Yep. I'm going to keep screwing it up. Or you can, wait a minute. What else? What else do we got? Oh, here. Yeah. And if you would like to, you can also invest $1.99.
Cheap.
Thank
There
you.
Go.
Sorry, I was like, oh, me?
tweet
Do I get to
song.
do
Wasn't
it?
ready
Do
to
I get
say
to do it?
cheap.
Cheap.
There you go.
I didn't know it was my time. I'm very excited.
The Player One Podcast app, where you can stream all of our episodes. What is it now? 12 years, a dozen years of episodes.
13
years, Baker's dozen years of episodes. Straight to your listening device on the Apple or Android devices. There you go. I'm not going to do the second part of that.
You didn't do the Android
No, I'm
cell
not
phone,
doing that.
telephone users, Android
No.
App Store for that same
Not at
$1.99.
all.
Luke, say it
Cheap.
again.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
With gusto. Where else? You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on lots of other places at P1 Podcast. And if you feel so inclined, and we would really appreciate it if you do, you can support this show by going to patreon.com/P1 Podcast. Right, CJ?
Yep.
Yes. Where you can support our show. And if you are a supporter of what tier, CJ?
$5.
$5 tier. You also get access to our weekly after shows where we really try. That's where all the prep goes. That's where all the money goes. That's where no, they're fun little shows, and I highly recommend them. What else? Oh, and also if you want to watch us streaming live, you can do so every Sunday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern on youtube.com/podcast. I should say not every, most Sunday nights. Although I think we should warn our listeners. Of course, with the holidays coming up, we're going to pre-record a couple of our episodes.
True.
Through probably the final 3 Sundays of December, we will not be streaming live, but we will have shows every week.
It's true.
So please
Look forward to that.
Yeah. What else am I supposed to say here, CJ? Am I done?
I think that's it. Yeah.
That's it. CJ?
Yeah.
Thank you for hosting again this week.
Well, thank you for joining me, Greg.
Luke?
Yes.
Thank you for guest hosting this week. And please tell everybody where they can find you on the internet.
You can find me on Twitter and Mixer at Insipid Ghost. And if you're willing or able, you enjoyed my presence here, I'd love it. It would mean the world if you would check out the Xbox Expansion Pass, available on all of your podcast services. Just really would enjoy and appreciate you guys checking it out. I don't have 13 years of podcasting there. We're on episode 7, but starting a new project is always fun and exciting. And I would love for some of you guys to jump over and join me on that journey.
There you go. And again, thank you so much for jumping in and guest hosting this week. You were a much better Phil than Phil is.
Well, I listen to you guys every week. It was a blast. I hope you'll have me again. This is awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you, Luke. And thank you to all our listeners. And we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.